Thank you for joining me for this practice. I'm Megan, and this is entitled Hips and Heart. We're going to do a little bit of somatic movement, some gentle movement for the hips as well as the heart. And then we're also going to do just 2 restorative yoga postures mixed in there. So I would ask you to have an entire stack of blankets. Grab at least 2, 3 would be better. If you have blocks, grab some blocks. We're going to need a strap for this and a nice long strap. You could also use your rope belt. I have a stool over there, but either a chair or a stool. And if you do have a yoga bolster, bring it in. I'll show you how to use that as well on the restorative part. I'm going to do just a short talk, and if you want to skip the talk, we'll show you where to go. But just to tell you what inspired me to do hips and heart is this beautiful plant that is, the common term is an Irish rose. And you'll notice the flower on it looks a bit like a lotus flower. And in yoga, the lotus flower is very revered. It's a sacred flower because we recognize that the roots of the lotus flower grow in water, but not only water, deep in the muck, in this icky, yucky, cloudy space. But out of that muck rises that beautiful flower up towards the sun. So I was looking at this plant and thinking, yeah, it does look like a lotus flower, yet it's in the dirt. But the beautiful thing about it is that it does have a really, really hardy trunk and stem. So when we look at the hips are attached to our legs, and energetically, our legs and our pelvis are really one sacred space. So you can think of the strong roots and the trunk of this plant as being your pelvis and legs. The other side is that the flower, I think of like our heart. Our heart is flowering. And the way that this plant propagates itself is simply by dropping one leaf into the earth, into the dirt. So the same can be said to me when we're working through emotions in the hips, which the hips, I wrote a whole blog about it. The hips tend to hold emotions. We can call it our baggage claim area. And this idea that we can really get stuck in the hips. And sometimes what helps me is rather than staying present in that area, is to bring myself to this level of the heart. And it only takes that one leaf dropped to the ground. So one thought, one image, one positive affirmation that we breathe to our heart and send it down into the hips, into the earth to grow something new. So that's what this practice is about, is imagine yourself like this beautiful plant, and we will do our best to set intention to release whatever might be stuck in our hips that may present as physical pain, and then come into our heart and create some sort of seed, in this case, some sort of leaf that we want to plant deep into the earth. So I'll set my Irish rose aside. And the first thing we're going to do, you can do seated or lying down. So decide for yourself what's going to be more comfortable. I will show it seated and then also lying down. We're just going to take the legs out in front of us. Just give your legs a little jelly roll. And we want to feel that all the way from the toes to the hips. So if you're seated, your hands are behind you. Like I said, you can also do this reclining and just completely rest and shake it out. So if you've been standing all day, option of reclining probably sounds really good. If you've been seated all day or not moving much, you may want to sit up. So we're shaking it out, and then the movement we're going to make is going to bring our hips into external rotation. So we're going to take just the left leg first and think of turning your pinky toe down towards the ground so the whole leg is spiraling outward. And then just slide the heel towards the base of your spine and let the knee drop open. And then extend it out and let it go. Shake it out. So if you'd like to do this to your breath, I typically inhale and slide it in. Exhale, let it drop out. Let it just hang. Inhale, slide it out. Exhale, shake it out. So externally rotating, sliding in on the inhale. Let it drop on the exhale. Slide it out. Shake it out. And I'm just doing one leg first. Super simple motion. You may be down here doing it. And just feel this all the way from your foot through your hip joint. So we're thinking about the hips, but the hips in relation to the leg and the foot as a whole. These legs that allow us to propel ourselves forward in life. And inhaling and sliding up, exhaling, letting it drop open. Inhale, slide long, exhale, shake it out. The other thing, notice, we'll do a few more with the left leg, is when you're sliding in, you can slide right towards the base of the spine, the base of the pelvis. You could go out to the side more. So you can vary where the heel is landing when you come here. And just noticing external rotation, sliding, and letting it fall. And you can feel this from the standpoint of the hip crease all the way around. Think you're getting ready to plant your roots. Maybe shaking the dirt off. So there's the Irish rose, or the tree Aeonium as it's called. It doesn't like a lot of water on the bottom, so you got to aerate the bottom. Think you're just aerating your legs right now. Take one or two more with the left leg. And then we'll let the left leg land, and you can locate yourself in both legs. So we can land down here if you'd like, pausing, and just feel yourself from your left toes to your left hip and right toes to right hip, taking that magic moment to sense any difference in the two sides of the body. So we do involve the brain, and the brain's job is just to be present in anything that's changing, any comparisons, just noticing what it can feel in the body, any sensations. And then we're going to do the same thing with the right leg. So you're welcome to remain on your back side, or you can come up to seated. Right leg, think of tipping the pinky toe towards the ground or externally rotating the thigh, and then slide the heel up towards your buttocks. Exhale, let the leg just fall open. So gravity is your friend there. Slide it back out as you breathe in. Exhale, shake it out. So rotating and sliding on the inhale. Exhaling, let it fall. Lengthening on the inhale. Exhale, just shake out. And see if it feels better, if there's any discomfort in your back and spine, you'd rather do it on your back than do it that way. The other thing I like to do, if I weren't on camera, is close my eyes, because that's going to encourage you to go more into your felt sense, to really feel it, not see it as a movement, but feel it as a movement all the way from your toes through your hips. And just continuing on, planting the rest of our roots. And the beautiful thing about the Irish rose is that when I looked it up, the words that were the energy of the plant, so there's always words associated with the energy of the plant, was versatility and elegance. And I think versatility is something that is so important yet overlooked in all of our lives. We have to be versatile, right? So the fact that these plants can grow in any environment with very little fertilization, yet here we are fertilizing our own inner plants. Take a few more, just sliding that right leg. One or two more. And the other thing I think about is how these plants, here I am nurturing it in a pot, but it grows in the wild in a very harsh environment. It doesn't need a lot of care. It can grow in dry soil. All right, and then we'll pause. So we're going to take our first restorative position after we move our back a little bit. So I'm going to ask you to come, if you're laying down, to all fours. If there's any discomfort in your wrists, feel free to come onto your forearms. If forearms feel a little low, the way I get around that is I take blocks underneath my forearms. And we're just going to do a cat-like grounding. So you're here or on your hands. But we're going to do the cat motion on an inhalation. So typically you do it on an exhalation. So I want you to sense from the base of your pelvis, you can think of your tailbone, all the way to the base of the neck or the head. And as you breathe in, think of filling the back of your lungs and allow the back of the heart and the lungs to lift. And as you breathe out, just release. So you might be here. I'm going to go ahead and go onto my hands. But we want to extend the back body, create space on the inhalation, and just release the front body towards the earth on exhalation. So we're finding what we call that in yoga forward fold or flexion of the spine. But I want you to breathe it into the back body. Make this a breath-centered movement. Think of filling the backs of the lungs. So what we're doing is we're moving from our heart. Specifically, the back of the heart door is leading us into this motion. But notice how the hips and the pelvis are responding, right? They go into what we call that posterior tilt. That posterior tilt, or just like we said, coming into a forward fold. Just let your head follow however it wants. You can begin to deepen your inhalation, create more space, more buoyancy, and a nice, slow, complete exhalation, just letting your body fall. Sensing the way that the pelvis responds to the movement of the back of the heart. As the heart rises, the pelvis tilts. Take 2 or 3 more rounds with your breath. Slow and easeful. And on this last one, if you want to take a hold just for a few breaths, keep yourself in that flexion of the spine, gently pushing your hands or your arms into the ground, drawing the tailbone down. Think of spreading your ribs as you're breathing in, the backs of the ribs. And notice the compression in the fronts of the ribs. So spaciousness in the backside. The head can just hang like a ripe melon. And release. So we just prepared our legs, our hips, and our heart for the first posture. In this first one, I'm going to have you take a blanket. Stick with me. We're getting a blanket one-on-one course today. And I folded the blanket so it's really long. So grab your longest blanket, make it long. Keep blocks nearby and those extra blankets. And so what I'm doing here is I'm going to put either side of the blanket equally on the side of my feet. Take the soles of the feet together. Take one side of the blanket, fold it across your foot and ankle, and go to the opposite hip. So right foot side to the left hip. Left foot, folding it in and taking it to the right hip. Now you have a little bit of an anchor for your roots. And you can grab a hold of that blanket and gently draw your roots in a little bit closer to the base of your spine. The other thing I like to do then is take these end points of the blanket, sort of roll them up and tuck them underneath your buttocks. It'll help the blanket to stay there and also give you a little bit of support. So here I am. My roots are in the earth. They're gently being hugged by the blanket. And we're going to come into a soft forward fold here. But before we do, so you can see I'm part of the tight hip club here. I like a little support on the outer knees. You don't have to, but I'm going to take the blocks because I want to feel like I'm in a formation that's supporting me, like putting me in that pot, right? So I'm going to put those blocks underneath my legs where I feel supported. And then the other part is I'm keeping the low back slightly long. And think when we were inhaling into the back body, do that once and see where you land. So we don't need to fall way forward where there's discomfort. Just that little bit of rounding, like you're opening the back of the heart door. And then take some blankets in. We're going to be here for a couple of minutes at least. Take some blankets and support the front body. So you can see I just sort of stack them up there, wherever you want to be. And by allowing the upper body to rest on the blankets, you might sense the weight of the torso going into the thighs, encouraging the thighs to open. And this is where it's nice to have the blocks to the outside of the hips. But also think you're taking those roots and they're protected. You can sense your legs in the pelvis, like they're deep in the earth right now. Notice how we're gently expanding in opening the back body, the back of the heart. So see your legs and your pelvis as the roots and the trunk of that beautiful plant. And they're protected and they're being nourished. And sense the space between the shoulder blades and the back of the heart. You can even breathe into the backs of the lungs. The plants love air, right? And they clear the air for us. Just allowing yourself to breathe into this space in the back of the heart. Starting to bloom in the backside. And that versatility is this idea that we can bloom wherever we are. But you can go back and forth, go back down into the dirt, check your legs and your hips. How does it feel physically to allow the inner thighs to stretch and open? Sensing the spaciousness in the base of the pelvis, the pelvic floor. And perhaps your hips and your legs have something to say to you. If you're comfortable and you feel safe, allow them to just talk to you. And in this position, if you're able to come up with an image, which imagery can include sights, smells, taste, touch, anything, any of your senses, hearing, or simply an affirmation or a word. Breathe that image or affirmation into your body, into the backs of the lungs. The back of the heart door is open to receiving. Breathe it in there. And as you breathe out, send it from the flower of your plant through the stem and deep into the roots. So breathing into the back of the heart and breathing out, we send it down through the pelvis, the legs, and the feet. What can you say to yourself that will help to nourish, replenish? It's like you're fertilizing your own body. Remember that lotus flower that grows deep in the muck. And oftentimes we feel that stuckness of being in the muck. But just taking it up into the level of the heart, physically breathing into the backs of the lungs, mentally adding that image or affirmation. And spiritually, recognizing your beliefs. And that belief right now that the heart is the greatest healer. And we can measure the electrical energy of the heart through an EKG. And it's much more prominent than the electrical energy of the brain. So the more you can think of breathing into your heart, whatever it is you need and you want to grow, you're increasing that energy, that frequency, and then sending it down into the hips, the base of the spine, the legs. I'm going to remain quiet for about 8 to 10 breaths. Stay present in any sensations that present themselves. and use your affirmation or your image. Imagine that element of air again. We feel it coming in the nose, but bring it into the backs of the lungs, into the heart door, allowing the back of the heart to open with that beautiful Irish rose. And breathe out, just feel the way physically you can allow your upper body to land and be supported by the lower body, by the hips and the legs. Every breath out, the weight of the upper body is just falling into the lower body with gravity. Notice if there's any resistance. Some days that resistance clears, and other days it's enough to just notice it. We're going to be slowly rolling out of this posture. Take your time. You might even take your hands to the base of the head, the forehead, and slowly push your head up with the strength of your arms. You can pause there for a moment. And when you're ready, open up. Remove any of the props that you have there. Say thank you to your hips, recognizing this physical position of external rotation. Hopefully felt good for you. Uncovering your roots slowly. And then the next movement we do will be to take the hips into internal rotation. Similar to how we started, your legs will be in front of you, but once again, you can do this position seated. Feel the big toe side of your left foot and leg, the inner line of your leg, and just tip it towards the floor. So that's creating internal rotation of the hip. And begin to slide the heel out towards the outer hip. And just go as far as you can. And as you breathe out, let the inner knee fall. And then you're going to breathe in and extend it. And breathe out, shake it out, or just let it be relaxed. So now we're going into the internal rotation on inhale and sliding the foot. Exhale, drop the inner knee and inner thigh. Inhale, take it out. Exhale, shake it out. And you can again do this with eyes opened or closed. Don't force it. Just notice what that feels like. So if I'm doing it on the ground, it'll be that same action of internal rotation first, then slide, exhale, fall. And I definitely get a lot more sensation with this one if I do it laying down. There's further for the knee to fall towards the ground. So if it's too much, you might want to try it seated. And now just playing again like you're aerating your soil, your roots, and feel it all the way from the toes to the hip. And there's things we can play with, like where are we initiating this movement from? It might be by tipping the big toe in. It might be by rolling the thigh in. And those two things can feel different. So find the way to initiate that brings the greatest amount of motion, so the end range of motion for you, but with the most pleasure. You're creating space for those roots. Taking a few more with this left leg, just staying present again. What do you feel? What comes up for you? And for many people, this internal rotation tends to be a little bit stickier. I'm doing my happy side first. You'll see the other side is quite sticky. And again, you can keep moving, or maybe just for a few breaths, you want to stop and just let it land. Feel that internal rotation. Breathe into whatever you feel. Keep breathing. And then we'll stop and we'll take the magic moment again between the two legs. So you can do that seated. I prefer to lay back, even just like 8 to 10 breaths of being present in the two sides of your body, from the toes to the hips specifically. Noticing your roots. If your plant only has 2 roots, we'll call them the left leg and the right leg. And you're just noticing, does one feel heavier or lighter or longer or shorter? Is one just more present for you than the other? And then we're going to do that same movement with the right leg. You're invited to stay on your back, or you can come to a seated position. So the big toe side of the right foot now, we're going to internally spiral it. I think of rolling your thigh bone inward. You can feel that big, strong femur bone. And then slide the heel back. I got to go slow on this side. Exhale, let it fall. Inhale, take it out. Exhale, shake it out. So again, you can think of moving from your foot, the big toe side. You can think of creating the rotation from your thigh or your hip. And you might notice for me, there's a lot more stickiness on this side. So it doesn't slide easily. I have to really focus on a nice, smooth movement for this root. Sometimes we do need a little bit of fertilization due to environmental conditions. But the great thing about our bodies, just like that plant, is that those plants are so amazing, and I'm excited to see if it actually gets to 7 feet. I've seen big ones before, but they create a great interest wherever they show up, wherever they're planted. And that's us too. Sometimes we forget how interesting we are, how magical we are. And taking a few more with the right leg. Notice if you're starting to get rid of some of the stickiness. I can feel my stickiness vanishing. That's the versatility. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's elegance, but definitely smoother. And if you want to stop and hold the last one, just let the weight of the thigh bone and the shin fall into the ground. And we'll release that. So the next restorative pose is going to come more into that internal rotation. So we've covered that, but we're also going to be doing a what we call a back bend, or coming into extension of the spine. So you can do this sitting on the ground, and you can sit cross-legged if you want. You can sit, I'm going to sit on my shins because I prefer that. And if you want to join me on your shins, you can put blocks underneath your sits bones. So sometimes that makes it more comfortable. But I'm going to come down here. So feel free to sit on your blocks though, and just take your hands to your thighs. Recognize now the front of your body, specifically from the base of the throat all the way down to the base of the spine. So think tail to tongue. But let your heart lead. And next time you take a breath in, think heart gently comes forward. It's like your flower opening. And now you're breathing out, and you're just falling into your roots. Let yourself just fall back into your most natural position. So we're inhaling what we sometimes call as our cow pose. And exhaling, releasing. I'm focusing on letting my arms stay relaxed and feeling this extension build from the heart and from the breath. You can even breathe into the front of your lungs. So let the heart lead, but also notice how the hips are following. So the hips respond to this movement by coming into a forward tilt, an anterior tilt. I like to think that the energy of this movement is about teaching us to move and to move from our heart and to make decisions from our heart. And if our pelvis can be kind enough to follow. And part of that is what we say to ourselves, that we have to have that compassion and kindness for our own bodies. So we move from the heart, and your tail and your tongue are responding. It might even be good sometimes you can use your hands as feelers, place them on your rib cage, above or below the heart. I can do lower lobes of the lungs at the bottoms of the ribs. Fill those up. Mid lobes of the lungs. And upper lobes of the lungs, right around the collarbones. Might also sense the way that as we're expanding through the front body, the back body is compressing or contracting. But initiating from this sense of expansion through the front. Keep the back body muscles relaxed. Think of the movement happening gracefully because of the expansion of the breath. It's a buoyancy. Arms stay relaxed, and the tail and tongue follow. Last one or two. And then we'll release. So we're going to come into our second and final of the restorative postures. And this one takes a little bit of setup time, but I feel like it's worth it. And we are going to be there for a good, I would say 6 minutes. Sometimes I lose track of time, but it's worth setting up. We'll go into the second restorative posture, and you'll see I brought in my stool. So please bring your stool in or your chair. And I have a bolster on because I want to widen the space of this. So if you have some sort of pillow or something you can put on top of your chair or your stool. And then we're going to take a nice thick blanket, and you can open it up just a little bit, but keep it thick and put it right towards the front legs of your stool or chair. That's what your pelvis is going to go on, or the back of your spine. I actually like to keep the neat side towards my head. And then I'm going to show you how to do what's called the pelvic sling. It's a bit convoluted to get into it, but I feel like it's well worth it. And in this case, what I think of is we're creating a pot, a safe container for our pelvis. So coming up, what you're going to do is take the strap, and it's going to go across your backside, right across your sacred sacrum, that triangular bone. So put the strap there and keep the buckle in the left hand just in front of your left hip. And you want a nice long strap, and then I'll show from the front. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take the right side of the strap, the longer side, and we're going to cross it. And then we're going to take that right side and wrap it around the back again, but below our buttocks. So think of framing in your pelvis. You're creating this pot around your pelvis. And here's the tricky part, handing that strap into your other hand. So what I'm looking for is from the back side, you've got one strap across the sacrum and one just below your panty line. And then you're going to take the strap and close it up. So we want to tighten it. So think of putting your pelvis in this sling or in this pot, this safe container where it can rest and be fertilized and nourished, and tighten it up a little bit. So I've done this quite a bit, so I know I like it quite tight. I like to feel that little bit of pressure on my sacrum, but a nice pressure, the kind of pressure that lets you feel some sense of release. So you're going to tighten that up. And then before we go all the way down, you're going to take a second blanket, and I like a little thicker blanket again, and open it up and create like just a long lift. This is going to go behind the back of the heart. So we're taking this blanket and we're going to create that extension of the front of the heart, open the front of the heart door. So you can take that down. And when you come down, you're going to want it right about underneath the shoulder blades. So you can look at about the length of your torso, and you'll be able to move this, but lay it down. See how high you really want to be. Put your pelvis on the one blanket. Let your feet come up. And then take the second blanket and see if you can land it right under the back of your heart so that your shoulders are falling off. If you find your head is too far back, then please feel free to put something underneath the head, a pillow, another blanket to support the head. I even like to keep my head so high that my chin is tilted. So bringing the head and the pelvis both up above the heart. Any hand position that feels right for you, hands out to the sides to get that little bit of lift. So if you have a yoga bolster and you want to get higher into this heart expansion, then you can use a bolster here. I'm going to stay with the blanket though. Now let's take the legs into that internal rotation. So start by just letting the inner knees fall together. Just rock the thighs in and out a few times. And then see if you can maybe take your calves a little wider and your knees a little more inward. You can always firm up that blanket a little bit more, or the strap a little more. And then if it's too much to let the knees fall together in the internal rotation, you can put a block between the thighs or even a blanket between the thighs. But let the inner knees fall so you've got that internal rotation of the hips, just a gentle internal rotation. And then the lifting of the heart. And then just approaching this from the backside first. Land in your backside. Every breath out. Feel the back of the heart door supported. Let that fall into the ground. Feel the weight of the pelvis supported by the ground as well as your pelvic sling. And the sling is creating this inward energy. Sense the way you feel like you're getting a gentle hug in and around the pelvis, the sacrum. And just letting the inner knees fall together. I like to slide my arms a little bit higher up overhead, let the shoulders drop off of the blanket just to create more expansion through the front of the heart. But once you know you're letting yourself release and relax, particularly the low back, allow the lumbar spine to fall as you breathe out so it's long. Then turn your awareness into the front body. You can once again sense the space from tail to tongue. Encourage yourself to breathe into the front body. You can think of the lower, the middle, and the upper lobes of the lungs, the space around the heart. So your roots are suspended in the air, but supported in that suspension. The energy of the legs releasing into the pelvis. The pelvis and the head are grounded, and the front of the heart lifts and expands. Visualize the front of the heart as that rose. Come back to whatever image you created or affirmation. Let the air you breathe carry that image or affirmation into the heart, the front of the heart. And as you breathe out, allow the energy of that affirmation or image to feel its security, its space in the hips, the container for your hips. If your breath is your best doorway, and feel your rib cage. As you breathe in, expand from the bottom ribs all the way up through the collarbones. When you breathe out, you can empty from top to bottom or bottom to top. Recognize that energy of the heart, and you can be present in the physical heart. The heart is the muscle, the cellular level of the heart. But within that cellular level of the heart, there's memory and mindfulness. You go into the energetic heart, where we do things like read EKGs. And the energy of the heart is not contained. It cannot be contained within the body. As you breathe in, you might even imagine it expanding through the shoulders and the arms, out the fingertips. Breathe in and let it come through the throat, and fill the face and the head. And let the breath out continue to ground you. From the space of the heart, the flower grows. And each breath out, the flower looks back down at its stem and its roots, its space of physical support. With gratitude and loving kindness. Going even beyond the energetic heart, the physical heart, into the spiritual heart. What is it that you know in your heart? Maybe you want to share with your roots, with your hips and your legs. And the knowing in the heart is a very different knowing than what's in the head or the brain. Be present in emotions as they arise. If they help you grow, breathe them in, breathe them out, and send them into your soil, into that container you've created for your pelvis, into your legs, as your roots. If any emotions or sensations or thoughts rise up that don't suit you, that don't help you to grow, you're free to breathe them out. Let the air carry them away from your heart, out of your lungs, out of your body. Think of your diaphragm, a beautiful muscle that allows us to breathe fully and easily, as the gatekeeper. Above the diaphragm, we have the thoracic cavity, or what we call the chest cavity, the home of the heart. And below the diaphragm We have the abdominal cavity, the hips and the pelvis. The diaphragm, as a gatekeeper, can allow emotions to flow through and between the pelvis and the heart, or can also block them, protect. But whatever you feel in your heart, that energy is what feeds all of the organs in your body. It's the fertilizer for your organs of reproduction and elimination. All those beautiful spaces that are held within your hips and your pelvis. The heart creates from feeling before the mind ever thinks it. And in that felt space, we have a diaphragm that decides we send it into the pelvis or we just let it go right back out. Take this last minute or so in silence. Continue to breathe into your heart. Those words or images that you want to go through the gates of the diaphragm and into your pelvic bowl. Let those images or affirmations be planted. See your arms and your hands as an extension of your heart. Just playfully wiggle your fingers. You can move your wrists, bend your elbows, and if your arms are to your sides, slowly invite them back in towards the body. Place your hands on your heart for a moment. Physical heart, emotional and spiritual. A moment of gratitude. The word anahata, the anahata chakra, means unstruck or unchanged. This is where we find the versatility. To grow into that beautiful flower, regardless of what our roots are resting in. Then take a moment and place your hands on the front of the pelvis, the hips. Sometimes referred to as the womb heart. Just being present in this space with compassion and curiosity and gratitude. You can begin to wiggle your toes, move your ankles. Gently shake out your legs, let your knees fall to the edges if you'd like. Feel your calves rolling. And thank your legs and your hips for all the ways that they continue to help you to move forward in life, always guided by your loving heart. Please feel free to take your time coming out of this pose. I'm going to finish from down here today. Maybe I'll stay here a little longer, let Milo finish his nap. Thank you for joining me, for being with me and supporting me, and mostly thank you for taking care of yourselves. Because in every way that you nourish yourself, that creates the energy that we then share with others. Peace, joy, love, and light. Did you finish your nap?